Alright, in this video we'll be looking at the earliest and latest start times and the minimum completion time for projects. We used networks like this to model group projects, and this might just be a little snippet of a network. Alright, in our setup, each activity is an edge. It's labeled with a letter like our A and B and C and so forth, and each activity also has a duration indicated by the number. So depending on the story, this duration could be like 3 minutes or 3 hours or 3 days or whatever. And for the rest of this video, I'll just pretend it's days because it's easier to refer to that way. Okay. Then we remember we saw each vertex as a sort of progress checkpoint. It's a point in time in which all the activities going into the vertex have been done. And now that they've been done, we are now ready to do all of the activities coming out of the vertex. Okay, the important thing here is that A and B are both prerequisites in this case. So we can't start any of C or D or E until we've completed both A and B. That's super important for what we do next with the full network. Okay, so first, given the direction the arrows are pointing, this must naturally be our starting point. So at the start, we only have access to activities A and B and C. And somehow we have to work our way all the way to the end. Okay, and this would be our finish point, where the last task to be done is activity J, that one there. And so that's the setup of our project. Okay. Before we continue though, we're going to be attaching little boxes like this to like every single activity that we have, and the box will hold two numbers. Okay, so like a 5 and the 8 there. Okay, the one on the left I'll put in blue, the one on the right I'll put in red. The blue number will stand for the earliest start time of that particular activity the boxes are attached to. So what do we mean by earliest start time? Well, I like to think of a super keen guy. He wants to start the task as soon as he possibly can. So a 5 there might mean that the earliest time he can start is day 5. Okay, he might not be able to start instantly from the beginning because there might be some prerequisites, and so even if he's keen, he might need to wait on everybody else to finish their job first before he can start. So that's the number on the left. Think of a super keen guy. Okay. The number on the right though is the latest start time. Okay, what do we mean by latest start time? Well, I like to think of this as a sort of responsible procrastinator is what I'll call this guy. So he likes to procrastinate. He wants to wait as long as possible before doing his task. But because he's a responsible guy, even though he's going to wait, he's going to make sure that he doesn't keep anybody else waiting. So he won't actually hinder or delay the duration of the entire project. Okay, so this might happen when maybe his job is quite quick and he knows that the next guy down the line, right, needs to wait on not just him, but a few other people anyway, so maybe he can afford to procrastinate. Okay? Now, don't worry if this stuff doesn't make too much sense right now. I just want you to get used to the language and the structure, the setup. Okay, I promise it'll be clearer when we actually do the example. But before we go back to that, I'll also be attaching these numbers to each vertex. Okay, so to each checkpoint, it'll be like the earliest and the latest time that we can arrive at that checkpoint without delaying the entire project. Okay? Alright, so let's go back to the example. I promise that will make things a little bit clearer. You'll notice I've already replaced all of the vertices with these double box thingies, and I'll also be attaching a set of these to every edge. Now, this might look a little bit different to what you see in the textbook because I actually want to attach it to every edge. For some reason, they stack them all. It's really weird. Anyway, let's just continue. Okay, so let's start by getting all of the blue numbers done. So we're going to start by filling in all of the blue numbers on the left, the earliest start times, okay? Now, obviously, if we're at the beginning, the earliest time we're going to start must be the beginning of the project, which is on day 0, okay? And so if we're really, really, really keen, then we have access to doing A and B and C all on day 0, okay? And so we start everything we can immediately. So what does that do? Well, if you look at this checkpoint here, right, doing activity A takes us to this point. So what's the earliest time we can arrive at this checkpoint? Well, I'm going to start A instantly on day 0, but it'll take me 3 days to do task A. So that means that the earliest time I can get here is on day 3. Likewise, doing activity B leads me to this checkpoint here. I'm starting it instantly on day 0, but it takes me 6 days this time, which means the earliest time I can arrive here is on day 6. And the last one, same thing. I'm going to start C instantly on day 0, but it'll take me 2 days, and so the earliest time I can arrive here is on day 2. Okay, so that's my checkpoints. Back to the activities now. What activities do these checkpoints now open up for me? Well, let's go to the top again, this one here. Being here allows me to do activity D. And so if I'm really, really, really keen, I'll be starting activity D straight away on day 3. Likewise, being on this checkpoint allows me to do activity E. And so if I'm mad keen, I'll be starting E instantly on day 6. As soon as I get here, I'm going to start that straight away. Okay. And down here, same deal. If I'm really, really keen, then I'll be starting F as soon as I get here on day 2, and that's when I'm going to start activity F. Okay. All right, so that's my activities. What checkpoints does that take me to? Well, we might be starting up the top again, but if you look carefully, I actually don't arrive here because I'm looking at D starting on day 3, I'm looking at E starting on day 6, but I've got nothing on activity G. And remember, we only arrive at these checkpoints when we've done all of the activities there. So I can't actually deal with this guy just yet, okay? These activities here, I think, only take me to this checkpoint here because he only needs activity F. And F starts on day 2, takes 4 days, and so I can arrive at this checkpoint on day 6. Okay? And what activities does this checkpoint open up? Well, it'll be G and I. They can both now start on day 6. Straight away. As soon as I arrive here, I'm going to start G and start I. And only then can we look at the checkpoint up here, because remember this guy, I only arrive at him when I have done activities D and E and G, every arrow going into that vertex. Okay, so now I can look at this checkpoint here. Well, how long will it take me to land here? Well, if you look at just D starts on day 3, but it takes him 4 days. So that means that D can be done by day 7. Okay, but D's not enough. I've got to do the other 2 as well, remember? So what about E? Well, E starts on day 6, and it takes him 5 days. So that means that he'll be done on day 11. Okay? But remember, D and E aren't enough. I have to do G as well. So what about him? Well, he starts on day 6 too, but he takes only 3 days, so he'll be done on day 9. Earliest time, right? So what's the earliest time I can reach this checkpoint? Well, I've got to do all of them. D and E and G. So even though D and G are kind of quick, right? Day 7 and day 9, well, I have to have done E as well. So the earliest time I can have done everything leading up to this point must be day 11. I've got to wait for E to finish. So day 11 goes in there. Okay, so that's how you handle these checkpoints with multiple activities going into them. Make sure they all are done. You got to wait for the last guy to finish. Okay. All right. What does that open up? Well, this checkpoint opens up only one activity. It's H here, but he can start on day 11. Okay, so he starts straight away as soon as these 3 guys are done. He's going to start. And H together with I will take us to this checkpoint here. So a similar thing has to be done with these 2 arrows. H starts on day 11. It takes him 8 days, and so he'll be done on day 19. Likewise, I starts on day 6, takes him 7 days, he'll be done on day 13. So to get to this checkpoint, I need them both to be finished, right? And so that means I've got to wait earliest 19 days because that's the time it takes for this guy to finish. He'll be done earlier, but I've got to wait for him anyway. So the earliest time I can arrive at this checkpoint is day 19. Okay, the last one's simpler. Once I get here, I can do J straight away on day 19. Takes me 3 days. I'll get to the finish line on day 22. So that's how you get all the blue numbers, all the earliest start times, okay? You start with a 0 at the beginning, and you sort of work your way through like what we just did. Just be careful with checkpoints like this, right? When you have multiple activities going into it. All right, now for the red numbers. The red numbers, remember, are the procrastinators, right? But their sort of big goal is to not delay the entire project. They're going to procrastinate, they're lazy, but they don't want to hinder the entire project. And so that actually tells us that we're going to have to finish on day 22, even if we're being lazy. Okay, so we're going to be lazy, but we're going to be smart about it, and we're going to be finishing just as if we were full keen and everyone's working as quick as they can. So that's why the red number will have to match the blue number at the end here. And we're going to work our way backwards through the network in a very similar way. Okay? All right. So we have to finish on day 22. We have to, which means that J has no other choice. He has to start on day 19 because it'll take him 3 days and we have to finish on day 22. So he's got to start on day 19. What that means is that we have to be at this checkpoint here on day 19 in order to do J and finish. Okay, so that part hopefully is kind of clear, because things will get weird soon. All right, I have to be at this checkpoint on day 19, so let's see how that affects the activities going into it. H takes 8 days. I've got to be here by day 19. That means H is forced to begin on day 11. He just has to. Okay, he can't afford to wait. But if you look at I, it's a different story there. All right. Now he can start on day 6, we know that, but he only needs to be here by day 19, and he only takes 7 days to do his job. So that means he can actually afford to start on day 12. Okay? He can start on day 6, but he can afford to wait a whole 6 days because he's only got to reach this checkpoint on day 19. And so he's fast enough, he can start on day 12 and still make it in time. Okay? So that's what we mean by the latest start time. Okay, so let's check on our checkpoints. This one here, I think we can have a look at because we need to be able to do H by day 11. That means I must be here by day 11 as well. And what that does is it tells me about activities D and E and G going into it. Okay, so I have to be here by day 11. D only takes 4 days. So even though D could start at 3, he can afford to wait until day 7. Okay, because 7 plus 4 is 11, he can afford to wait all the way till day 7 before doing his job and still make it by day 11. Likewise, for E, now it takes him 5 days to do his job. He's got to make it by day 11, so that means he's going to have to start on day 6. So he can't afford to wait, poor guy. Okay, what about G? Well, G takes 3 days, and he's got to get there by day 11, so that means G can afford to start on day 8. Okay? Alright, so let's check on our checkpoints again. We can have a look at this one here now. Okay, now this checkpoint's the tricky one, the one you really want to pay attention to closely. Because this checkpoint actually has 2 activities waiting on him. I've got G and I've got I. G says, I've got to get here by day 8. I need to start by day 8. I can't afford to wait any more than that. I, on the other hand, is going, I need to start on day 12. I can't wait any longer than day 12. Well, which one's more urgent? Of course, G's more urgent. He's got to start on day 8. He can wait till 12. He doesn't mind. But he's got to start by 8. So we have to cater for the urgent guy. Right? So we have to cater for G here. And so we have to get here by day 8. Even though I can wait a few more days, sorry, for the whole project's sake, we've got to be here by day 8 for G's sake. Okay? All right. So what activity does that open up? Well, we now have F here, who takes 4 days, but we've now worked out that we need to be here by day 8, so that means that F can afford to start on day 4. Okay, while we're here, we may as well go back to this checkpoint too, because he only is needed for F as well, so that means that we can afford to get here by day 4, right? But if we now look up, same thing's happening here, where E needs to be done or started on day 6, and so we've got to be here by day 6 for E's sake. Same thing here, D has to start on day 7, so we've got to be here by day 7 for D's sake. Okay, so that now leads us to the final 3 activities. We've got to be here by day 7, and A only takes 3 days, so that means we can afford to start A on day 4. Okay, even though we could have started A instantly, well, we realize we've only got to be here by day 7, so we can afford to wait 4 days and still not delay the whole project. But this one's different because I've got to be here by day 6 and B takes a whole 6 days. So that means B has to start instantly. I've got to start B from the very beginning on day 0. Can't afford to wait. Okay. But the last one, I've only got to be here by day 4 and C only takes 2 days. So that gives me 2 spare days there, and I can afford to start C on day 2 and still make it to this checkpoint by day 4 and not delay anything else. Okay? Alright, now this last one's going to be a bit silly, but I'll do it for completeness sake, because that was the tricky case where we had, say, multiple activities coming from the one checkpoint. Now we have A going, I've got to start by day 4. We have B going, I've got to start by day 0. And C going, I've got to start by day 2. So who's the most urgent one? Of course, it's the 0. But for goodness sake, this is the start of the project. Of course, you're going to start on day 0. It's always going to be 0 and 0. If it's not, you've messed up somewhere. So check. Okay. But that is worth sort of noticing, because the trickiest thing, I think, was actually down here. Right? When both G and I needed you to be here. One needed you on day 8, the other needed you on day 12, and so you have to make sure that you are catering for the more urgent guy. Okay, the guy that says, I need you on day 8, well then you've got to be here by day 8, even if he doesn't need you just yet. Okay, so that's how you get the earliest and latest start times of each activity. A lot of questions you get in exams and stuff will start by making you do this, and then from here you're going to interpret a few more other things. I'll look at that in the next video, but make sure you get good at this first. My expectation is that you might understand this now, you might not, you might need to rewatch it a few times, but you'll find that when you have to do this yourself, it's going to be quite tricky at first, most likely. Okay, you might need to almost go back over this video and sort of rewatch bits of it as you're working out your own one to remind yourself of how this stuff works, but make sure you get good at it, because a lot of questions start by making you follow this whole process. Okay, so that's earliest and latest start times. I'll see you next time.